Alright. Best juice in town, right? From Stuff a Bagel in Farmingdale. Freshly squeezed every morning. Well, that's at least what they tell me. It tastes fresh and good carbohydrate on a hot day after a run. So I want to talk a little bit about interval training and just general fast days and workout days. I'll start it off with run your pace. Don't go faster than your pace because you're not training that specific system, right? So I have a conversation with a friend and he's asking me about threshold pace. And he says to me, well, if I don't push the pace on my threshold days or my tempo days, how do I improve? How do I go faster? I said to him, now when you train at your threshold, you have to train at your threshold, not above it and not really below it. Because if you train above it, you're training more of VO2 max. And I said to him, when you train just right about there, when you recover on your easy days and your body overcompensates, and therefore threshold moves a little faster, so you don't need to push so hard on your tempo runs. And my friend, who was going, for like 7 or 8 mile tempo runs faster than his half marathon pace. And I look at that saying, I barely go 4 miles at my half marathon pace because it's kind of fast, and it's hard for me to do that. And I rather go a little bit slower and longer, because when you go a little longer, you build a little more strength. Now, how do you get that speed to go faster? Well, then you do intervals on the track or even on the road. 400 meter repeats, 1,000 meter repeats. Therefore, that's faster than your half marathon pace. So if you're training for a half marathon pace, you have to get your threshold runs in at half marathon pace or slower or marathon pace, and you got to get your intervals in at 10K pace and then 5K pace at VO2 max. So when you work every system, you improve by that much. So the intervals make half marathon pace feel slower, while longer marathon pace runs, 10-20 seconds slower than threshold pace, makes the half marathon pace feel easier or shorter. So you work all the systems. When I do a VO2 max workout, there are two types. There's VO2 max and there's sub VO2 max. The sub VO2 max is like 10K pace because that's around 30 minutes. A VO2 max it could be held in a race from 12 to 14 minutes. So I did a workout, a couple of days ago, and it was 15 by 1,000 if you saw that blog. 15 by 1,000 on hills to mimic the Utica Boilermaker race, which I am racing after next week. So what I did was 15 by 1,000 at 15K race pace. So big intervals like that are specific to that race pace. If I did 10 by 1,000, I would do that at, 10K race pace. If I did 5 to 6 by 1,000, I would do that at 5K race pace. So when you do a certain amount of intervals, you go your pace, not really even your predicted pace, but what your physical pace is, or what you really feel like, or comparative to race times. And I'm someone who races often, so I know what my race times and what the predictions are for the longer distances if I haven't ran like a 15K yet. So my 10K predicted, I could run around 45, 30. So I went that pace for 15 by 1,000 on similar course with hills, and there you go, the race pace. I didn't go faster, because if I maybe would have started going faster, then I would have some intervals that are slower, and then you don't have that consistency. So when you're running your pace, you always could keep that hard consistency. And don't get me wrong, 15 by 1,000 is a very hard workout. I would say after 10 of those, the last 5 intervals I really had to work and I really had to dig deep on. But I think of that's the way you pace yourself for a 15K race. And 15K race really sucks because you're breathing that hard and that heavy for that much longer. So it's definitely harder than a 10K, I would say. And a 5K is short, but it's really intense breathing. It's right on VO2 max. So when you design your training program, take your most recent race effort, and then maybe you want to do a conversion for a longer and shorter distance, what that might be. For me, it doesn't always work that way, because the longer the race for me, the longer the distance, the better I usually get, the shorter the worse I get. So I don't run a fast mile. I'm not a miler. I never even broken 420, which is pretty sad that my 5K pace is 427 per mile, 428. But so when I train at mile pace, you know, it's not going to be 60 seconds per quarter. I'll train like 64 seconds per quarter, really, for reasonably. But you know, I'm just that kind of person who doesn't have that kind of speed. So in the end, the most important thing is you have to run your pace. And when you run your pace, you'll improve at a faster rate. You won't burn out as much. Burning out is a little bit more of a mental thing. I think people burn out because, you know, they over stress themselves and they're just grinding workouts and you're exhausting their body so much, and then you know, the results aren't improving as fast as they could be if you would just relax, run your pace, and take time to do it. But in the end, it's not these really short periods of hard intensity, you know, a really hard week, and you know, it's all about the consistent and training consistent for a long term. So train consistent at a moderate effort for a very long time makes better results than having very short periods of super intense training. And of course, you know, I've done that. You know, I've gone to Italy and I ran up a mountain every day, and I did 2 workouts a week. I was last summer, and yeah, by the end of the summer I had just nothing left. Like, my whole body was just like, and I had to recover. And yeah, I benefited from that, you know, from coming into the fall, and I was definitely stronger this next year. But, you know, I think mentally it'd be a little easier to not run so hard to the point that you're passing out. I think there is a time for that, and everyone should experience that kind of feeling, because it's a growing process, and you should learn what, you know, what it's like to basically die. You know, that feeling in training when you're running so hard. But in the end, just it's years and years of training. I think I've been training seriously for about 8 years now. So I started off in high school, you know, second year in high school or so. But before that, the physical activity I did was I played soccer, and I ran to school every day, as you know, in elementary school, very little, 2-3 miles a day. But that's what kind of just built up, got me strong. You know, so it's that long years of consistency. High school, I really started training. College, definitely started training. Now I'm on my professional career, and I've learned a lot of things throughout this whole entire path. So, and it ended up being this, you know, hard work, consistency, high mileage, 180 miles a week. And you may say, well, that's like training really hard, you know, in short periods of time. But I've held over 140, 180 miles a week for years now already. So, and that was just a slow build up to, you know, 40 miles a week from when I started running or so to 8 years later, boom. So, you know, you never know what your body could do. You got to test it sometimes, and it's kind of like an experiment to me. This running was like an experiment. It's like, okay, what can I do? And I was always curious about science and how the body works, and you know, general experiments we did. And you know, this is like my greatest experiment. It's just like, see how fast I can run, see what my body could do, and it's just the thing that I just developed into, and you know, and in the end, I never stopped running. And yeah, I always stayed consistent. So, for you guys out there, train your own pace, train smart, and train hard. So, never stop running. That's why I say never stop running, because you got to keep running if you want to be good. So, a lot of people, they stop running and they never get, you know, they stop improving. So, never stop running. Always inspiring. El Coyote Loco.